The NFL playoffs are here, and we're going to try to take home the FFPC Playoff Challenge. A little bit different form of best ball, still technically best ball. We don't have to set our lineups after the playoffs begin, but we're going to try to figure out the best way to navigate the FFPC Playoff Challenge to take home the top prize here at Spike Week with a little bit of help from you guys.
I thought you were going to say something, Erik.
I was about to. We were both literally like kind of about to say something, but kind of waiting for the other person to say something. You know, I guess we're both,
God
very.
Damn it. How many times have we done this? We
nice,
know what we're doing.
I know we're very nice people. We both wanted to let the other one speak, which is not always my forte. But so we're here. The playoffs are here. I honestly can't believe it. We've done so many shows. Maybe it's all my brain is mush now. But it's hard to believe that it was hard to believe, like especially the way the regular season best ball, in fantasy football regular season ended. Maybe that has ruined my brain. But we're 2 days away from the actual NFL playoffs, and I think it's such a good. I wanted to do this. I know we don't do, a lot of the non-traditional best ball type stuff. I do want to dive more into the FFPC stuff. And technically this FFPC playoff challenge really is just another form of best ball, right? It's a little bit different, but it's kind of the same thing. And it looks, I don't know. I don't know how, I'm not an expert in like how fast this thing fills. It's got a lot to fill, like a lot if it's gonna fill. And it's I bought us into the $200 entry contest, and I don't know, it needs like 5,000 more people. It's not even half full yet, so it's kind of hard for me to imagine that this thing fills. So I wanted to have us walk through this and have the folks in the chat kind of, I'm not going to claim to be an FFPC playoff challenge expert. I know, some of the people that we talk to frequently are really heavy into it, including a new multimillionaire, Pat Corrine. But I think that there's so much fun strategy around any of the like best ball playoff best ball type contests. And this is just another form of that. So I figure we could put something together with kind of our thoughts and the chats and the Discord's thoughts around what we think happens in these NFL playoffs. And I wanted to be better prepared. I was trying to think of exactly what we'll do. If we win, no matter how much we win, if we win anything, we'll do some kind of free roll type situation with the money, half of it or 3/4 of it or something like that. We can run some kind of contest for the Spike Week community. So this can kind of be all of our team, right? Not everybody maybe wants to spend $200 on one of these teams. This can be all of our team.
That sounds fair. That's what makes us better than everybody else, right? We give back. It's not just you watching us draft, collect our money, smell it. We are giving everybody an opportunity to be a part of it. So suck it, Corain.
Yeah, exactly. Corain's just gonna buy a $1 million townhome in Brooklyn now or whatever, and flex on all of us. And then he's, the Corain victory, not Corain victory laps, but everyone, it's so good for the community. Obviously, Corain winning, because everybody wants to pump him up and stuff. But it's just so funny. Like if Joe Schmo, right, won the $2 million, like he wouldn't be on every single podcast known to mankind for like I can't imagine. Like I talked to him a little bit since then, but I wasn't trying to because I know I can only imagine what's going on for him. And I'm just like every day he's on somebody else's podcast or getting interviewed by Matthew Berry on NBC.
Yeah.
I know he works for them, so it's different, but he's just absolutely everywhere. So
most importantly, me and him are trying to work something out to meet up next week.
Right. So yeah, that's definitely the most important part of his last couple of weeks. Yeah,
it should be, of course. And if he doesn't if we meet up for like lunch, because I have to give him the title, and he doesn't buy lunch, I'm calling him out everywhere. Like if we go out to eat and he's like, "Hey, I'm not picking up this bar tab. I'm probably gonna fight him, most likely."
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you think about it, he's getting off really easy. He could have had to do a pizza party for a bunch of people, so now he just has to take you to lunch.
That's right. Speaking of which, just to bring this up real quick, we're going to Nashville in a few weeks. Is this when you're going to do your stand-up comedy on stage situation since you finished last in the Spike Week championship?
I don't know. Give me enough drinks in me, and maybe we'll go out to a comedy show. That's what my wife will really want. Me getting hammered in Nashville, doing god awful. Lord knows I'm not a comedian doing god awful stand up, but well,
that'll make my weekend.
We'll we will see. I did not think through this whole entire Royal Rumble contest, and the positive is Karine won the most important title of the year. Yeah. Pat Karine also took this down, the Spike Week Best Ball Royal Rumble. But we don't need to talk about who is at the bottom. Me and you.
Seems fair.
This is definitely true. Derek, our intro was very rookie. TJ popped in probably while we were being silent and dropped the, let's break the ice with somebody saying something. But Johnny Footballs is here, and he's firing at this this playoff challenge. And I did maybe only one or two teams last year, but I used to kind of before, 4 years ago or something like that, before all this best ball stuff really took off with Underdog and draft back in the day, Drafters, DraftKings. I used to do a lot of these. And this is one of the things, this particular contest is one of the things that probably got me really hooked into the kind of best ball-ish space, which then segued into the regular playoff best ball stuff on like Underdog, draft, etc. But had a really good, it was when the Seahawks lost the Super Bowl, I think, right? When Russ threw the pick at the goal line. I finished like maybe 10th or something in this, so that's the best I've ever done. But so it's been a long time. But this playoff challenge is really, really fun, and I think it's kind of a nice differentiator from all of us that have been drafting the gauntlets and the mittens and the drafters tournaments, and these definitely a nice change from the DraftKings 20 round playoff best ball tournaments that they have, because obviously we don't have to deal with draft rooms. And so it does become a lot of what I consider like the real point of best ball is threading the needle on projection / upside versus ownership, right. And that's the game for this, even more so than regular best ball, because there's no draft. And so I'm excited to get into it. Have you done any of these before?
I've done them a few times. I don't know if I did it on FFPC, but I've done it there's so many variations of this particular type of contest that I definitely done it before. And there's some very important keys to just start off with, and we'll get through all of that when we're doing it. But I think it fits for us because it is essentially best ball. We set a lineup and then we pray to the football gods that it does well, and we don't do anything to adjust it, right? So
yep.
I was going through some of this earlier today when we decided to do this and started looking at some stuff, and I'm excited because there is some variations we have to go through of players that are going to be chalk, but it's some of them you might have to take, and then it's not just chalk players to take, it's chalk teams to fade too.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what we have to look at and be is there even a 1% chance for this team to advance? And it's kind of murky this year at the bottom. It looks real bad. So
yep.
It might be because of this 7th seed thing. Now that it's super wild card weekend and not just regular wild card weekend, and we're adding this extra team, these extra teams are getting waxed on a regular basis. It's not like before where a 6 seed team used to it was small
really
chance, but they had chances. The Giants did it one year, and there was a few other teams that made it through, and you're okay, so some of these 6 seeds are decent enough to make a run. These 7 seeds a lot of the time are
mean, they're league average at best teams, and they're playing a lot of the times top 5 teams in the NFL, and there's parity and everything in the NFL, but that's a big gap, right? We're talking Bills versus, now a Tua and Teddy Bridgewater-less Dolphins team, and the positive, the Seahawks against the 49ers are, don't have the bye, but that had nothing to do with them. That had to do with the fact that the Eagles played the easiest schedule in the NFL. The Eagles are good, of course, but it's kind of I don't mean this comp in they are the same level of team, because there's a lot of different variables, caveats to that. But the Eagles feel a little Titansy from last year in that they're good. They can win, but they're not like, when you think the bye, you think like Bills Chiefs. You're like, okay, those two teams are dominant. They're definitely the best teams in that conference. The Eagles are probably the best or top 2 team in the NFC, but I think the gap is very thin in the NFC, and they haven't really proven much to me over the course of this entire season. And so then you get to your point, you get the 49ers, who by a good amount of metrics at full strength are probably better than the Eagles. Now we'll see if that plays out, but from a analytical standpoint, and maybe even an eye test standpoint, they might just be the best team in the NFC, and they play the freaking Seahawks, who, awesome story, but I don't really see how they have a great chance, other than, I guess, if Brock Purdy turns into the rookie quarterback that we haven't seen yet. And then, like I said, Bills on the other side is a shit show against the Dolphins, which could have been a fun game. We saw the first version of that game was very fun. And then the other one is the Giants, which is kind of funny that they weren't the first one that we talked about when we talked about crappy lower seeds, because they play what probably would actually be the Titans of last year, kind of total frauds in the Vikings, negative point differential and all that kind of stuff over the course of the season. A lot of lucky comeback wins, including the greatest comeback in the history of the sport. And the Giants just keep winning these games that we don't expect them to. So it's definitely very interesting. But to your point, we'll get to the rules of this in just a second. The fact that there's those Seahawks and Dolphins and even Giants to a lesser degree, it makes it tough to make some decisions, because how do you handle raw points from a DK Metcalf or something in a game where they're probably going to get destroyed, but everybody else is playing it as if that's going to happen too. So that's the fun of this whole format.
It's an interesting game because Seahawks +10 is my favorite bet of the weekend, believe it or not.
I think that's fine, but
but fantasy wise, it's tough. Yeah.
And winning, right? Them hanging in the game, I don't think is unrealistic at all. We'll definitely get to kind of our breakdown of the playoffs and the matchups, but them outright winning, which is what you need in this. Not only do you need them to outright win, you need a DK Metcalf or a Tyler Lockett or something like that to go nuts too, so it's difficult. Yeah,
for sure. So we should probably jump into these rules.
Yep.
And go over some of this stuff and go over like how many players per team, and like how you're going to have to fade 2 teams and all that fun stuff.
So the first thing I see, I just am here on it's kind of a little bit easier to explain rather than grabbing the rules. It's just looking at the roster that you have to fill out here. So
definitely.
as everyone watching, or if you're on the audio version, you have to pick one and only one player from each team. Let me correct myself. You can only take one player from each team in order to fill out this entire roster. You will not have to have a player from every single team, but you can only have one from any individual team. So you will absolutely have to pick players from teams that are going to lose on Saturday or Sunday or both. So that's kind of the most strategic element to it, is just, which teams do you, not even the most strategic, the first strategic element is what teams do you leave off, right? We just talked about a little bit of some of those teams that are probably the most viable for that, but you have to fill out 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 4 flexes, a tight end, a kicker, and a defense. And so, I mentioned the one and only one time I've had a real sweat in this thing. The Seahawks made the Super Bowl, and I actually used their defense. So everybody was using Marshawn Lynch, right? Or I think it was Doug Baldwin back then, Russell Wilson, etc. And I actually used their defense. Now, I'm not saying we should use the Bills defense or whatever, but we'll get there. Things like that, I think, are some interesting leverage points on top of just, pivoting to Debo from CMC, or which teams, right? Or playing a Seahawk or playing a Giant, or those kinds of things.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Those are some of the things I want to start talking about, is like the defense and the tight end position being in here is like, it throws everything off for the most part, like, because your brain immediately goes to Kelsey for it.
Yes.
So, It's like, how do we pivot off of Kelsey and how do we play that position? So you would think that there would just be another flex spot, but nope. They make you do if they're going to make you do a kicker, they're going to make you do a tight end.
I do kind of think it's for this format specifically. I don't know how I feel about it on like drafters, and I feel really up against the wall on drafters having to take these tight ends. It feels really uncomfortable, but I think that's okay. Everybody feels that way. On here, I kind of think it's fun because, like you said, Kelsey is very clearly the standout at tight end, but he has a bye, and I don't think that the Chiefs' road forward is very fun for them. So it makes it pretty fascinating to deal with. Again, it's mostly a Travis Kelsey debate at tight end, but I think that there are some intriguing pivots at tight end. And then, yeah, I think it's easy to sit here and say, like, how much are we really going to discuss Christian McCaffrey, right? You know, those kinds of things. But tight end, kicker, defense are very difficult things to evaluate. And I think it's a great edge because everybody just says, I'm just going to take my right. Kicker's going to be on whatever crappy team that I don't want to move forward because kickers don't score the most points. Same for defense. Same for tight end outside of Travis Kelsey, right? So that gives us some leverage points when we build our teams.
I'm just going to bring, since we brought it up, the drafters tight end thing. I drafted my first drafters team today and I wasn't paying attention. And as I'm building my team like halfway through, I noticed that there's a tight end spot. I go, no, there's not. That's not real. That can't be a thing. So I ended up with Noah Gray as my tight end. I'm fine with it. It doesn't bother me because like Noah Gray can play 3 games and score like 2 touchdowns if you're lucky and run good. But yeah, that threw me way off today. I was like, oh no. But yeah.
I've drafted probably far too much. No, I mean, no one is a greater Hayden Hurst fan on the planet than me over all the underdog drafts and drafters drafts and everything that I've done. Hayden Hurst is my highest owned player. So that never makes you feel good. You're like, well, all, my thousands of dollars of playoff best ball, all invested in Hayden freaking Hurst.
I was inverted brings up a great question. It's, with this being tight end premium, do you think 2 to 3 tight ends is a good path? I think it's a fine path. Like if you really like, you could do, I think there's enough viable tight ends on the slate to do that with, like, especially, I mean, we have already talked about Kelsey. We know Kittle's in this, but I mean, you also talk about 2 guys that are playing each other this weekend, which is Gerald Everett and Evan Ingram. And if you wanted to grab one of them from that game, we know that they both have explosion level outcomes. I mean, Evan Ingram had like a ridiculous game earlier this season.
What did he score in tight end premium? Because he scored 40 in regular PPR. So, he dropped the 50 ball or whatever in almost 50 in tight end premium. So he has just same thing with TJ Hawkinson.
Yep.
Inconsistent, but he's had more true spike games than Travis Kelsey has this year. Evan Ingram just had the one. Hawkinson's had at least 2, maybe 3 of these 40-point explosions, and he's in a really fun game. So we joke about kind of the shittiness of tight end, but there actually are a lot of interesting guys, especially if you're willing to, right? Like you brought up the Jags. If you're willing to kind of invest in the Vikings or the Jags or whatever, Hawkinson in particular will be, a nice pivot off of Justin Jefferson, who's going to be very popular. So tight end's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting spot. And teams as a whole, like you bring up Hawkinson, Minnesota, I think is going to be one of our big, interesting discussions because we know where everyone wants to go and it makes a lot of sense to go there. But I think there's pivots off of that team and I just don't know if I want to make those pivots. So we'll have to talk through it.
So really quickly, the rules are pretty straightforward. We pretty much covered that. What I want to do is start to talk just not this specific contest, but like I'll pull up the playoff bracket and we can kind of just talk through what we're thinking in terms of the path forward for the teams, because I think a lot of people will frequently start with, just like, oh, I like this guy, right? They're like, oh, I got to play CMC. I got to play Jefferson. I got to play, I got to play Kelsey, whatever. And then they start to, you dive in too quickly. One way that I personally think you can get an edge is just by talking through the bracket and how it may or may not play out, and maybe even how Like you could be totally off from them, right? You like the Seahawks plus 10 this week, not necessarily that you like them to win, but maybe you're higher on X team than the market is. And that can lead you to different decisions, or lower on X. Like I might be a little lower on the Bills than everybody else is. And they're, chalk team to make the Super Bowl, even though they're in the wild card round. You're going to get, it's Allen and Diggs is what everybody's going to play. We've seen a lot of, kind of issues with the Bills over the second half of the season, particularly Josh Allen. And so I think talking through some of those things, that how the playoffs could play out, your expectations for the teams, can be a path to uniqueness by itself. Like you don't have to sit here and galaxy brain, contrarian plays like, I'm going to play Brandon Ayuk instead of Christian McCaffrey or George Kittle. Like, sure, you can play Brandon Ayuk, but it doesn't all like it, you can have a reason that literally is like, I think the Bengals are going to make the Super Bowl. They're like my pick to make the Super Bowl, blah, blah, blah. So what does that mean? Right. Well, that means something about the Bills. That means something about the Chiefs. That means something about clearly the Ravens. Jesus Christ, what a disaster the Ravens are. But it means it has this trickle down effect to the whole thing when you say, okay, I'm going to build this team for the Bengals making the Super Bowl. Well, that means the Ravens get knocked out in round 1. The Bills get knocked out in round 2. So those kinds of things are fun to talk about.
Yeah, first thing I did when we decided to do this was I went and looked at the bracket, and I was like, what 3 or 4 teams can I just like kind of throw out the window right away? Like, who are the 4 teams that I am just not confident in advancing at all? And I pulled 3 that I was pretty confident aren't going to advance. But yeah, let's work through it a little bit.
I hate
so
websites.
While you're bringing it up, I'll just start bringing up the first round matchups, which is, we have the Chargers against the Jags. We have the Ravens against the Bengals. We have the Dolphins against the Bills. Cowboys, Bucks, Giants, Vikings, Seahawks, 49ers, and of course, Kansas City and Philadelphia, the Kelsey brothers, have the bye weeks. So that's
should be a good podcast episode from the old Kelsey bros this week while they're both chilling, watching everybody else play.
I saw a nice clip of them talking about the Ring Around the Rosie play. So that was a good clip. If you haven't seen that, go find it. But yeah, there are some like super, super interesting games in this first round that are just like, it's a 50-50. I mean, just look at the first game that they're showing. It's that Chargers Jaguars game. And no, you can't tell me you have a strong lean either way of whoever's going to win this game. This is a coin flip, in my opinion, of who's going to get through this game. So this is like a gigantic leverage point of how you want to play Jaguars Chargers. I mean, we all expect the Bengals to kill Baltimore. Same with the Bills and Miami. So like for me, Baltimore, Miami are like 2 easy teams to throw out. Cowboys, Bucks. I think it's a coin flip too. And I think people are overlooking the Bucks, and like, obviously they haven't played well this season, but then you're saying the Cowboys have played great this season, and they have not played great. We talk about the Vikings being a fraud. The Cowboys could be one of the bigger frauds. And I mean, I know they're the 5 seed, but based off the hype and what everyone thinks that they could be one of the bigger frauds in the field as well.
Yep.
And that brings us into the fraud, the Vikings against the Giants. And then everyone thinks that San Fran's going to just absolutely bury Seattle. And I think they're going to win, but I think there's a higher percentage outcome of the Seahawks winning than people are expecting. I mean, it's a division game, right? With both teams being relatively full strength in terms of, Brock Purdy is obviously their 3rd string quarterback, quote unquote, but he's been playing for 6 or 7 weeks or whatever.
Probably their best. He's probably their best. At this point, I don't think we can treat him like a 3rd stringer. Not just because of his play. Of course, he's obviously exceeded expectations, but he hasn't been, like, the hype is a little out of control on just precisely how good he's played. But it's because the expectations were so low. He was the last pick in the draft, blah, blah, blah. Everybody knows the story. So the hype is like out of control. However, even though the hype has gone probably way too far on his level of play, he's what's the difference between him and Jimmy G? Nothing.
Right.
And the only difference between him and Trey Lance is that he's a better, more accurate short game passer. And Lance was really boom bust and could run, but he's probably their best right now. Lance has a ceiling, I think, that Purdy doesn't have, but his current level of play was not better than Purdy. So nothing has really, right. It feels weird because they're like, you have the last pick in the draft as the quarterback. Like, oh, eventually that's going to change. Something's going to change with them. But I don't think anything has changed at all. If anything, they're better now, not because of him necessarily, but because the whole rest of the team is healthy.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with all of that. Just when you got this third division game, Seahawks are at full strength. Pete Carroll, Shanahan, they know each other so well. And this is like hand in the dirt stuff, I guess, is what you could say.
Oh, yeah.
But
this is the hand in the dirt show for anybody that doesn't want to you're going to have to deal with it.
But I mean, we've seen it in the past. When you get that third division game, it's tough for both teams to win. So I think that gives the advantage to the Seahawks in the sense that like they're overlooked so much that I think people are giving them like a 1% chance of winning, and it might be more like a 10% chance that they win this game or something like that. So
right.
That's kind of why I like the bet of +10 on them this week. Like I'm hammering that bet this weekend. But I mean, they might be a team that we still throw out. Even if I think that they can win, I don't think this is going to ever be a 45-35 game. You know what I mean? Like this is, we got some rain elements coming in.
Yep.
It's tough. It's tough because we have to play someone from San Francisco. It's just, do we throw out Seattle is the question. Yep. So is that what we want to do? Do we want to start building our bracket first?
Let's build a bracket here. I guess I should have brought, I don't think this is just the picture. And while we're starting to talk about that, I'll build what's the best place to build a bracket? Does CBS have one? I really don't. Playoff bracket. Here we go. Yeah, there we go. Okay. We can start to build it out while we're talking here. So let's just start with, to me, what is one of the two most fascinating games of the opening round. We'll just start in the upper left with the Chargers and the Jaguars, what you kind of led with. 2 weeks ago or something, I would have said I was very in on the Chargers. They were peaking. Shout out Sam Hoppin. This was 2 weeks ago, I think it was, that he posted something on Twitter that was basically showing the Chargers kind of second half-ish, analytical profile, particularly on the defensive side, which is where they really, really struggled right early on. My God, the Chargers, I don't know what's in the water. I don't know what, they got the freaking, what's the Netflix movie or whatever, the Good Doctor. Have you seen that? The guy that like killed, the doctor that was killing all of these old people or whatever, like just a sick, twisted individual. He's poisoning these patients for whatever reason. That's the training staff in the Chargers. They must have employed this dude because everybody just keeps getting hurt. And then, so they start to get healthy in the second half. There was like a 6 or 7 week stretch against some decent teams. Their defense was number 2 in DVOA in the league. The offense was scoring because the offense kind of always scores. They were getting healthy on offense. Keenan Allen was coming back, right? Bosa is back. The offensive line's getting healthier, blah, 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 blah. And then Brandon Staley in a freaking literally meaningless game. We talk about meaningless games in week 18 a lot, and sometimes we're like, like we thought the Eagles game was meaningless. Like technically they still needed to win, right?
Yeah.
The Chargers, they could lose by 100 or win by 100. Nothing was going to change for their playoff seed based on how the games had played out. And Brandon Staley played his starters for more than 3 quarters and got Mike Williams hurt. He, as of today, as of this recording on Thursday, he still has not practiced this week with his back issues.
Well, in fairness, we know that Mike Williams has been a pillar of health his entire career.
That's true.
You can usually roll him out, right? He's never been hurt before.
Yeah, rock solid player. Never missed any time. No. Certainly never burned me in best ball from drafting him every goddamn season and watching him play 6 games. But yes, no one could have foreseen Mike Williams getting hurt in a meaningless game, right? And, excuse my rant, they fucking lost. They got embarrassed.
And they lost to the Broncos.
It was like, there's 2 things. You rest the guys, to save their health. but the boomer coach, which Brandon Staley somehow has become, he was the guy all the boomers hated 2 years ago. Now he's the guy all the boomers love. You don't want to lose your sharpness, right? That's what people would say. That's why Brady always plays. He did it again this year, played like 2 series or something like that, right?
Yeah.
He just wants to stay in a rhythm. That's whatever. It's fine. If you say that, what just happened on Sunday did the opposite of keep your your team high, keep your motivation high, and keep your in a team in a rhythm, because you went out and lost to one of the worst fucking teams in the NFL, and you got players hurt. Like, it was the absolute worst case scenario for the Chargers. So I'm on one hand, I'm not trying to overreact, because I do still believe in the Chargers, but the Jags are like an ascending team. And they just continue to, we talk about the Cowboys being frauds. They went in and beat the Cowboys, right? They're on like a 5-game winning streak. The Titans stink, but they kind of handled them. They've been playing really, really well. Trevor Lawrence has continued to get better. Evan Ingram all of a sudden is like a really good tight end, and the defense is playing a lot better. And so if there's no Mike Williams and the Chargers are at full strength, the Chargers aren't going to have any big plays. They don't have without Mike Williams, they don't have anybody that can go down the field. So they're going to have to dink and dunk Keenan and Austin Eckler for all game to beat a pretty good Jags team. It's tough, man. Like I said, I'm not trying to overreact to what we just saw in the last week or two, but it's hard not to kind of like the Jags in this one.
I like the Jags in this one. And just to like go a little bit off of your Chargers take, doesn't matter who the head coach is, doesn't matter who the players are. Chargers have been the same team for 20 years. They do the same shit. They find the dumbest ways to lose games. They do the dumbest things in games. When we think that they're supposed to do something special, they are just dumb. They are dumb. People that listen to the Food for Thought podcast might have heard this rant that I had. It's a lot longer on that one. But the Chargers are a dumb team. They are stupid, and they always have been. And as of right now, they always will. And there's certain teams that we see this with every year. The Browns, like the Chargers, like some teams just have these weird identities that it doesn't matter who they bring in a coach. It doesn't matter who they bring into play. They can't shake these identities. And spoiler alert, it hasn't been shaken this year either. The Chargers are still the Chargers. I know Jacksonville is not like the pillar of like success that, I'm comparing them to or anything, but Doug Peterson has gone in there. He's done a great job, like in terms of like turning this football team around. We got to remember what Jacksonville was last year. They were the worst like culture in the entire league, like overly toxic. Trevor Lawrence was not getting developed properly. He looked like complete ass. And look at his progression just from game 1 to game 17 this year as a player. Like, I mean, I've seen quarterbacks that have ascended through a season. I mean, we got to give Doug Peterson some credit for what him and his staff have done with Trevor Lawrence this year. It's just an ascension, like with very few. It's, sometimes they're like, oh, it's 1 step forward, 2 steps back. It's like 1 step back, 5 steps forward, like every week for Trevor Lawrence for the most part. And they get the game at home. It's basically a pick 'em. The Jags are somehow underdogs. Another bet I'm making when I bet is I'm just money lining the Jags this week. Like, especially because it's such a coin flip that I think the Jags win. I mean, the Mike Williams thing is big, like you brought up. It's just changes the complexion of this offense. And I like the Jags. I like what they do on offense. And the one way to beat the Chargers is by running the ball. So I think you might even see an explosion game from ETN this week, who might be getting overlooked. So I'm going to have a ton of ETN and DFS, and he might be a place that we might want to go when we start talking about who we're going to take for players. But yeah, give me the Jags on this game personally.
Yep, we are on the same page, which will make things pretty interesting. I thought we could goddamn click these. Anyway, we'll be able to remember it. Jags move on. I think we just both assume this one is pretty easy. Bengals, Ravens. You could make a case. We'll go through this one and some of these other ones a little bit more quickly than we did with the Chargers, Jags. You could make a small case for Mark Andrews in the flex over maybe some other flex. So I'm not going to rule him out entirely. But Anthony Brown looks like he's going to be starting at quarterback. The Bengals defense is really good. I think that's one of the things that people overlook about them as a team. And so I just, maybe the Ravens maybe something that to consider is the Ravens defense semi holding the Bengals in check like they just did. But, that's just a consideration for which Bengal do we pick. Kind of like the 49ers thing. It's like, we know we're taking a Bengal. It's just about how far we want them to go. I don't know that there's much to cover on the Ravens unless you have something.
No, I mean, the Ravens, just what can you say about them? It is what it is for them this year. Like they're probably toast in this game. They're not as big a dogs as I think they should be. And they might be a team that we might want to throw a player on if we decide that some other teams are like no good, like maybe a Dobbins or maybe a Justin Tucker. I don't know. Like that's where we're gonna have to start talking about that stuff.
I think Tucker. I don't think I can play the defense. I guess, if you're just going to punt off defense, I think that there's still maybe some better options, but maybe not. Tucker, I think I would probably prefer Tucker to Andrews when we get down to that. I also think that without Tua, moving on to the next game, without Tua, thank you. Without Tua and even without Teddy, not that Teddy would have mattered that much. I don't see much for this game in terms of discussion, but I do think Tyreek and Waddle are going to be in that conversation as well, right? These teams that we know we're going to lose, we're going to have a conversation about how they fit into the team. Tyreek, or do they fit, right? Because Tyreek is still Tyreek. It's not a good matchup. He has terrible quarterback play, blah, blah, blah. But Tyreek is still Tyreek, and he's in play, for a flex spot.
Yeah, I mean, like breaking one. So like that's the difference between this format and DFS is like Tyreek's really hard to play in DFS this week. But, if he gives you 20 in this format, you're going to have a player that does something week 1 that you're not going to get to round 2. So
yep.
Tyreek is might just be that guy. So I can definitely see us going to that well, but I can also see us being like, well, you know what? We just want to throw away Miami.
Yeah. And Johnny Footballs brings up, I don't see much of a difference between Teddy and Skylar Thompson when it comes to beating the Bills. That's fair in terms of, the question is how much of a difference. And I agree that's totally debatable, but I think Teddy gets a bad rap, and I don't think Skylar Thompson wasn't very good in college. Frankly, neither was Brock Purdy. So who knows if that means anything. Then they're both ironically in this same Shanahan McDaniel system, but Teddy is one of the most accurate passers like in the history of the NFL, which is precisely what this offense runs off of. Crossers throw. That's why Tua's not that great. He's just accurate as shit. Like he gets the ball to Tyreek and Waddle, and I think Teddy could do that better than Skylar. So I would not a big difference, but I would like Tyreek more if it were Teddy. So that's all.
I heard Rich Rebar on our show breaking down like the yards per completion or something stat, and I could be getting that completely wrong, but it's like yards per with each of the quarterbacks for the Dolphins. And the quick breakdown is like Skylar's at like 4 yards per play, Teddy's at like 5.5, and then maybe 2 was at like 6.5. So like, it's massive. That's a massive difference. So
it's huge. More than 50% more up to Tua, and not quite 50% more up to Teddy. One last thing while I'm thinking about it, that we should just keep in the back of our minds what's up with Raheem Mostert. I haven't seen the latest today, so if somebody has, please feel free. I have not been able to scour the injury reports over the course of today, but I think if Mostert does not play, Jeff Wilson does become also in play, and kind of really interesting actually for, the like you said, you have to pick some guys that are going to be on losing teams. If he's a stone cold workhorse, it's not a great matchup, but if you're going to play someone against the Bills, the ground game can be the spot to do it. He will catch passes if there's no Mostert out there. He's going to get goal line carries. I think it would put him in play as like that last man in from a shitty losing team.
Yeah, I don't hate that idea. All right, let's hit this NFC side. Do you want to start at the bottom or you want to start at the top here?
Let's do the top, because the the 49ers game we talked quite a bit about, and there was a lot of back and forth in the chat on the Bucks Cowboys. I'll let you go first. What are you thinking on Bucks Cowboys?
I mean, it's this is the closest game on the slate to me, and that Jags Chargers game is real close. Like, this is like a razor thin margin, but I think Tampa squeaks this game out at home against Dallas. That Dallas secondary's, other than, what's his name? Oh my God, Diggs. Other than Diggs is not great. And if Brady gets any time, he could probably carve them up quite a little bit. And I think Dallas are frauds. I think they keep showing us that they're frauds, and people don't want to believe that they're frauds. Not that Tampa's good, because they've been terrible all year for the most part, other than that Carolina game offensively. But it's tough to run the ball on Tampa, especially like they've stuffed the run all year. They don't give up a lot of points all year. Their defense is relatively good, and Dak loves to turn the ball over.
Average.
Yeah, slightly above average. And Dak loves to turn the football over. It's like he likes probably money, food, and turning the football over, like his three passions in life, I think. And he consistently does it. So you lose a turnover game against a team like the Bucks that is just trying to grind you out, and that's how you lose football games. So I think the Bucks are going to squeak by in this, but I'm not confident in that selection too much, to be fair, either.
No. This is definitely, I have stronger, not necessarily conviction, but I can more easily talk myself into the Jaguars as my like firm stance, if you want to call it firm. Jags Chargers. I feel better about the Jags than I do about either of these two teams, but it's because I agree with you. Like we talked about the Chargers in terms of they just can't get out of their own way for, both of our whole lives. These two teams, and whereas the Jags, I can tell myself the story that they're ascending. And like you said, last year, Urban Meyer maybe brought the team down, influx of talent, better coaching, Lawrence taking a next step, blah, blah, blah. This one is most difficult to me because I think they're both frauds.
Yeah.
And it's like, I have to choose between, I got two redheaded stepchildren here, and I got to pick one of them, and as a ginge myself, I know that that's difficult for people to figure out. I mean, I grew up as one. The Cowboys are 100% fraudulent in my opinion. And I think more so than kind of the ups and downs that they've had all season, I actually think, I know it's one game and the specific results isn't what I'm latching onto, but last week against Washington, they're facing a 5th-round rookie quarterback in his first game. Sam Howell. Washington has nothing to play for, and they laid a bigger stinker than the Chargers. They couldn't even move the ball, and they like, I mean, it's not like Howell just totally dominated them, but they were able to move the ball, a lot more than you would think. They no running backs. They're literally on 2 practice squad running backs, and a 5th-round rookie quarterback. Now, I kind of like Sam Howell, and I think he probably should have gone higher than that, but that's not the point, right? He's not that different from Brock Purdy in terms of draft capital, and they went out and lost, and they couldn't move the ball at all. And now the Washington defense, I think, is a little bit better than the Bucks, but not like so significantly that it's like I'm looking at DVOA. Washington is 9th in defensive DVOA, and Tampa Bay's 13th. So very similar, kind of the same strengths as well up front. Really, they're physical and really athletic and all that. And so I think that the Cowboys are going to struggle here. And it's the big takeaway was CeeDee's really good, and they got nothing else. Dalton Schultz is just a dude. Like, he's fine, but he's just a dude. Michael Gallup ain't it. He can't separate for shit. I don't know if it's the injury, he's not back, whatever. They don't have a third. I mean, they're probably gonna have to play T.Y. Hilton a lot because Noah Brown's awful. Zeke can't move, and they don't trust Pollard in pass pro, so Zeke's out there more than he should be. And it's like Pollard needs to play as much as possible because their offense, their wide receivers can't separate, so the defense just keys on CeeDee. They can't really run the ball all that well, and this isn't a great matchup for them to run. I really struggle with them, and so I'm leaning a little bit towards the Bucks here. But the problem is that we talked about this in the offseason. I wrote about it extensively that I thought that the Bucs were massively overrated, and everybody was just saying it's Brady and all the same guys, wash, rinse, repeat. And I was like, that's not really how it works. Look at the Lakers. LeBron's getting older. His cast of characters, Russell Westbrook's getting older. It's like those guys, it doesn't last. And I think Brady himself has gotten a little worse, kind of like LeBron. He's still awesome in terms of like how good he is relative to his peers, but he hasn't played really well this year. The offensive line is still bad. Now it's getting healthier. They're getting some guys back on the offensive line, which is huge. And they're pretty healthy all across the board. And so I don't expect them to like go and light up the Cowboys, but I think Brady can like manufacture enough, right? With Godwin and stupid fucking Lenny and, Mike Evans, dude, Diggs is decent, but if he bites on something, you double move for Mike Evans, you could get a big Mike Evans game here. And so I just trust the Bucs not to shoot themselves in the foot, and they have enough weapons despite bad O-line play and that's really bad in this pass rush matchup from the Cowboys. I just kind of trust, especially at home, the Bucs a little bit more. So I hate them. And I wish that they were playing like the 49ers, because it'd be like, this is easy. They're going to lose. But I can't believe I'm saying it, but I kind of like the Bucs.
Yeah. I mean, if this game's going to be a dogfight, like I think it's going to be, I just lean Bucs. Now, if you tell me that this game's going to end in a blowout, I'd say, oh, then it's the Cowboys, right? Like, because I just don't think the Bucs are going to completely like blow the doors off of the Dallas Cowboys. But I think the game, more likely than not, will be a dogfight, and I edge it out to the Bucs. We see what they do in dogfights. That's the games that they find ways to squeak out, and I think that's what's going to happen here. So, are we both going to go with the Bucs?
I think so. Just a couple of comment. So this is funny. He says, Terrence says, wait, you're a ginger. Technically it's strawberry blonde hair. Thank you. It has a reddish hue, but yeah. That's why I call myself a ginger. But I mean, it's a fair point. Week 18 motivation. Terrence says, I just didn't think. I don't know that I would go so far as to say they didn't prepare. I don't think that that's how the NFL works. It's not like that they didn't have meetings and they just hung out at home all week and then showed up for the game. They clearly were preparing. Plus, they played them before. They're in their same division. I think the Week 18 motivation is fair, but this isn't just Week 18. They should have lost to the Texans. So, okay, you use that same argument. It was the Texans. They didn't prepare for them or whatever. Okay, they lost to the Jags. Mm-hmm. They lost to the Packers. The only reason they beat the Eagles is because Jalen Hurts was out. They lost to this Bucs team in week 1. Did they prepare for week 1? I hope so. So like at what point did they, do we use these excuses for the Cowboys, right? With the Bucs, we can at least use the excuses like, okay, look, maybe the roster's not awesome. They did suffer a lot of offensive line injuries, right? Blah, blah, blah. Godwin wasn't necessarily healthy at the start of the year, et cetera, et cetera. But they don't have those issues now. So, or as much. The offensive line's still bad, but just not as bad as it was.
Pretty excited that you might have just got us an Alta sponsorship for future Spike Week shows. So, all right. So this one, I think we might disagree on, because I think you might go a certain way on it, but it's Minnesota and the Giants. Where are you leaning on this game? Because I know that the Vikings are frauds, but I don't see them losing this game at home to the Giants personally.
No. Same. The Giants, I mean, if Tua were healthy, the Giants would, and Lamar were healthy, the Giants would by far be the worst team in the playoffs. This was the best draw that the Vikings could possibly get. I don't hate the Giants, and the Vikings are a like for this FFPC playoff contest, the Vikings are a defense that you can absolutely attack. So we're not going to write off the Giants necessarily, but it's just, man, how many rabbits can Brian Daboll pull out of his hat all season, man? Like that, I just can't see it with the Giants. Maybe I'm not being imaginative enough, because it is Kirk Cousins and the Vikings, and they were down 33-0 to the Colts. So, obviously they can lose to the Giants, but I think if I'm a betting man, I just want to back the Vikings here. It's the Giants just smoke and mirrors all year, man. I can't wrap my head around them winning a playoff game.
Yeah, same here. And then I already clicked in San Francisco for us.
Yes,
because there's not much more we need to talk about with that in terms of like the actual game itself. I guess that brings us back over to the AFC bracket. Kansas City over the Jaguars easily, right? Like,
yeah,
I don't think we have to go too far into that. I mean,
no, Jags are good, but come on, it's Mahomes.
All right, so why don't we do this? Eagles over the Bucks for sure, right?
Yes,
and 49ers are definitely going to take care of the Vikings, is what we would say.
Yep.
So the one marquee matchup in the second round is going to be Bills-Bengals. I don't know how you can pick against the Bills right now, personally, but if there was a team that you would think could beat them, it is the Bengals. I would lean Bills here. Are you looking to go contrarian and think that the Bengals might upset them?
Yep, I'm on the Bengals here, and I get that maybe that's a little out there. I really like what I've seen from the Bengals all season, like basically all season. They lost Chidobe Awuzie, which is going to hurt at corner. He was their best corner and playing as one of the best corners in the NFL this season. So that's a small concern. Go ahead.
I'm yawning. Sorry.
I thought you were preparing. I was trying to be kind again, and this time it was just a yawn as opposed to me.
I was trying to do it like subtly, though. I was trying to like.
It looked like you were going like, wait, no.
No.
I just think that the Bengals are such a real, and so I mean the Bills, frankly, are too a really well-rounded team. I like both of these teams over the Chiefs, so we can have that prepared in our back pocket for the next round. Just because I think they're so well-rounded, they both have. All three teams have, three of the best, if not three best quarterbacks in the NFL. Really good wide receiver play. More so, the Bengals have the best wide receivers in the NFL. Good defenses, just like they can hang on. They're just like legitimately really good defenses. So it's kind of a coin flip between these two. But getting the hand in the dirt, I just don't really like what the Bills have done here down the stretch, particularly Josh Allen. I think their O-line play has actually been sneaky bad. And I think that's really what has contributed to Josh Allen struggling. And I can't get this out of my brain. So maybe I'm just being biased by having watched all their games and it just like burning into my skull. Every time Allen is getting pressured, he does not handle it well. He is eyes down, staring at the rush the moment somebody is even looking like they're coming free and running. And like not even necessarily just like running to run for yards, but getting out of the pocket, trying to avoid the rush. And his biggest strength is his arm as a passer. And when there's pressure coming, typically it's via the blitz, which opens up the guys like Diggs, particularly Diggs, but even Gabe. We saw it with Shakir here and there. Dawson Knox. These guys are big play threats. He needs to hang in there to be able to make big plays for this offense because they're not really a great dink and dunk team. Like the Bengals are a really good dink and dunk team. The Bills are not. And I think the Bengals are going to be able to get home on him. And I think Josh Allen has played pretty poorly. Now, he's awesome. Could he flip at any moment? Yeah, but I actually think I trust Joe Burrow's level of consistency as a passer right now. And it was a really, it was half a quarter in that game that got canceled. Burrow just came out, cooked them up real fast, one drive, boom, 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 right down and scored. And I just think the Bengals are really, they didn't play great in week 18 either, but I think that they're really rolling right now. And they're just like my favorite team in the AFC. And I think it's going to be a little bit contrarian to build for them for the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I mean, I have no like pushback on everything you said there, but the Bills are the Bills is like kind of like the answer to that. And they could still definitely be the first team. They have that whole like narrative going for them as well. They're going to be at home this time as opposed to on the road against Cincinnati. It's December. We don't know what kind of field conditions we're going to get in that game, which could be real interesting. And just to address the chat real quick, you are not keeping me awake. And I'm technically on vacation for the first day today. So I'm just transitioning into vacation, which I think Erik knows means that I'm just working like 60 hours over the next week instead of 100. So I don't know. I like the Bills, but again, this is like a razor thin margin for me, so I can be convinced to go Bengals. The thing is, for me, if we go Bills here, I would have Bills over Chiefs, but if we go Bengals here, I have Chiefs over Bengals.
Okay.
So that's what the interesting part for me would be, is what our little pathway is going to the Super Bowl. So how do we? This is our first tie, which is interesting.
Mhm.
Do we want to let the chat break the tie? Do we want to flip
Yes.
a coin?
Chat decide, everybody, for the next 30 seconds, Bengals
Yeah.
or Bills. And I'm happy to default to your Chiefs over Bengals if it's Bengals, and Bills over Chiefs if it's Bills. I'm happy to default to that. So we need the chat to decide Bengals, Bills for us.
Well, they do that. The one thing I want to bring up real quick is, did you see that they officially elevated Cole Beasley
yes.
to the roster, which I think is an indictment on like Isaiah McKenzie and everybody else.
He also did not practice today, McKenzie.
Right. Okay, so that makes even more sense then. So I think your player pool, I mean, it's still 4 players for me on the Bills, but I think it really limits it down to the 4. It's going to be, Allen, one of the running backs. It has to be Diggs over Gabe, although Gabe is just a great leverage point, but Diggs is just so much better. Just so much better.
Right. One thing I'll say is I do really like fading Allen in this contest. We can get to that in a minute when we pivot over to building our team, but I think he's going to be pretty chalky for a quarterback that obviously we know he's awesome and he has the upside and blah, 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 but hasn't been amazing for quite a while in terms of fantasy. Some of these other guys have been better. So
looks like we're going Bengals.
Bengals
based on the chat. So we'll go Bengals. So these are 2 tough matchups we have left, and then we really should start building this team.
Yep.
Are you Eagles or are you 49ers?
49ers all day, baby.
Oh my God. I'm Philly on this one. I just don't. I think when you get to this point, Brock Purdy's a great story, and it's both teams are complete. Like both of these teams are like complete teams.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're going with complete teams, I just think that they have the better quarterback. And it's like such a simplified answer to this question. But if I need one of these 2 guys right now to win me a game, I am taking Jalen Hurts at home versus Brock Purdy in the national, the NFC Championship game. But both teams are so good. Like they are just both. They are the 2 most complete teams in this entire tournament by far, is what I would say. As much as I like some of these AFC teams, like the Bills, Bengals, Chiefs, I don't think any of those are as completely well-rounded as either of these 2 teams. But I don't know. The Eagles just feel like they edged this one out for me a little bit.
Yeah. What I'll say is this is the matchup we better get. Neither of these teams better lose. I don't want to see any of these other shit NFC teams in the conference championship. This is what I want to see. I agree with you. I think it's a total coin flip. I'm just on the 49ers I totally agree. Jalen Hurts is better than Brock Purdy, but I think that the 49ers collection of talent across their entire team is a little bit better than the Eagles. Now, that's not to say that the Eagles' talent isn't awesome, because it is. But my God, the reason why Brock Purdy has become such a thing is not even really about Brock Purdy. It's the fact that he has the best skill group in the NFL behind a good offensive line with a brilliant fucking guy, pulling the strings, calling the plays. Christian McCaffrey, probably the best all-around tight end in the NFL. George Kittle, probably the best all-around running back in the NFL. Definitely the best receiving running back in the NFL. Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, and a borderline elite wide receiver that does not get the credit that he deserves, kind of because of the offense that he plays in and because he has all these other studs around him. And Debo, look what Debo did last year. He's kind of been under the radar because he hasn't had a huge season. He's been banged up or whatever. Now they're all back to full strength. they're just that as I love AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, and Goddard, but that collection is just a little bit better for me on the 49ers side. And so and they're both good defenses, but I mean the front seven for both these teams is good, but the Niners is just like downright freaking scary, man. Like that you cannot run on them, and you can run a smidge on the Eagles, and you like the pressure that Bosa and co bring is just crazy. So I'm just, kind of standing the 49ers, but if they lost to the Eagles, I would not be the least bit surprised.
That Eagles secondary though is like so
awesome.
good.
It's
like
Chauncey,
so good.
With Gardner Johnson back, especially, they're really good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's just gonna be. It's gonna almost come down, like not completely, but like it's gonna come down to what can CMC do out of the backfield, catching the ball and stuff, versus the Eagles, and can Hurts break contain and just like get out there and like wheels, like he needs wheels to beat this team. I just think the Eagles get a little bit of an edge personally. I think a young quarterback getting frustrated. Not that Hurts isn't young too, but he's been in the league a little bit longer, seasoned. Obviously. Yeah, he's a little more seasoned. And personally, I'm on the Eagles. I get the San Francisco call, but I don't know. Are we going to the chat again?
No, I'm cool with Eagles. I'll give in on this one. I don't have that strong of a conviction. I just like the 49ers. I'm not like I won't bet them if these two teams play. That I don't feel that strongly about it.
All right. Well, we're on opposite sides of the AFC. I think we've already talked about. And if you wanted to concede on the Eagles, I'm willing to concede on the Bengals if you want to do it that way.
Yeah, I just want to really quickly, and then we can move on to obviously picking the Super Bowl and building a team. But I think that, God, dude, that I love the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes is the best football player, definitely the best quarterback on the planet, right? Everything about the Chiefs, Travis Kelce or whatever. But we've seen this song and dance with the Bengals and the Chiefs quite a bit. Burrow owns these dudes. Chase and Higgins, they don't have anybody they've gotten a little better in the secondary, but they don't really have anybody to cover those dudes.
Right.
You still have Tyler Boyd and my apparent best friend Hayden Hurst. Mixon, is a good football player. And I just think Burrow he just picks these guys apart. And I think this specifically, like whether it's Bills or Bengals, I don't think they'll run into any problems against any other team in the AFC. But this, I would call it this final five. I think that these five teams that we're kind of struggling with here are by far the best teams in the NFL. There's a big drop after Chiefs, Bills, Bengals, Eagles, Niners. So, but I think the Chiefs just their defense just being average and the lack of skill position talent on the Chiefs outside of Travis Kelce. Like the reason Jerick McKinnon has been crushing, he's good. But the reason he's been crushing so much is because nobody else gets open. So Mahomes is checking it down to him. They're using him in the passing game a lot, right? MVS can't get open. Sky got hurt, couldn't get open. McCole had a setback. Who knows? He sucks anyway, right? Tony's barely playing. And Juju can't get open. So, like, when you start to compare these things, I just think that the Chiefs eventually are going to run into a team that, Mahomes might be able to save you. I'm not saying they can't win, but I think that they're in a little bit of trouble against these more well-rounded teams.
I think of all years for the Chiefs to get a bye, this was the most important year for them for some of those reasons that you brought up, where just not having to play that extra game is like massive for this type of team, where in past years if they had to play 3 games it would have been like whatever, like it's still the Chiefs, right? So
and not having to the way the bracket played out for them is perfect. Bills Bengals on the other side, so only having to play one of those teams. That's gigantic for them. So our Super Bowl, I guess the winner doesn't matter, but our Super Bowl is Eagles Bengals. So do we want to start building this team? Yep, let's do it.
And based on Eagles Bengals being our Super Bowl, I would start off by saying, I know it's only, I guess like you got the 4 versus 3 games is like a big thing. But I don't know. I was going to say, I think we got to go Hurts at the QB position, but it's definitely Hurts or Burrow. We have to go for QB, right? And if all things were equal, to me, it would definitely be Hurts. But that extra game might be a big difference maker in taking Joe Burrow, and Burrow might be lower owned than a lot of the rest of the Bengals because not everyone's going to be putting the Bengals into the Super Bowl, right? So my gut instinct was to go Jalen Hurts, but the play might actually be to go Joe Burrow.
I think it's Burrow. I love Chase and Higgins, of course, but I just think, and I will say, I don't think that you have to have a rule that your quarterback comes from what you expect to be the Super Bowl. Shit doesn't always play out like how you
Right.
want it to be, and you can still win even when it doesn't play out how you want it to be because of how this contest works. If Jamar Chase goes nuts and makes the Super Bowl, it's totally fine, especially because now if we had, well, the 49ers are a terrible example. If we had Bucks or Cowboys or something like that in the playoffs or in the Super Bowl. Here's an easier example. If we had the freaking Giants, right? The Giants make the Super Bowl. You don't care about their wide receivers. All you're worried about is Saquon versus Daniel Jones. I would just take Daniel Jones in that instance.
Mm-hmm.
With the Eagles only playing 3 games, I do think it's a little trickier, but ultimately I think you would like to have your quarterback in the Super Bowl. I think it's him or Chase, and I don't think we have to get super cute. I like T, of course. Like if I were entering a bunch of these, I would probably have all 3 of those guys. No mix-in for me personally. I think I would have all 3 of those guys, much more heavily leaning to Burrow and Chase. But I think for our sake, it's kind of fairly straightforward, especially because of what Burrow's going to have to do, what he's going to have to do to get them there.
Yeah.
Beat the Bills and beat the Chiefs, and then also play in the Super Bowl against a good team. So I think we just go Burrow. Before I want to keep the Eagles in our back pocket because I think there's a lot that we can probably do with the Eagles, including I don't even think like the defense is off the board. I don't think Dallas Goedert's off the board. Definitely not the 2 wide receivers. And so let's go to kind of back to the first round. And is there anybody that like you just feel we have to have? I was going to toss out McCaffrey. That I just if they play 3 games, I don't know how the running back pool is thin, brother. It is thin in these playoff rounds. I don't know how you don't play Christian McCaffrey if your expectation is they win a couple games.
Yeah, so McCaffrey I think is a good point on San Fran, and I think he'll be the highest owned 49er, but I don't think he's like going to be 100% owned. And I think that's also part of the thing with Joe Burrow is when you have the Bengals in the Super Bowl, I think that Chase and Higgins might be more owned than Joe Burrow easily in this tournament. So putting Joe Burrow as the quarterback gives us leverage there. And when you get leverage in certain spots, you don't have to get in every single spot,
exactly.
Right? Like, and I think Christian McCaffrey is more than fine to take as one of our 2 running backs. And spoiler alert, we're not limited to 2 running backs if we decide that we want 3, maybe 4. But I think McCaffrey from San Fran is a great pick.
I'm glad that you said that because I had thought about that earlier with Burrow, in that I think Chase will be the go-to Bengal for sure. I'm not a wizard on the projected ownership, right? Like our ship chasing friends and Corain is on this, but I can use general intuition and say I would certainly expect Josh Allen to be the highest owned quarterback, and in turn Joe Burrow can't be that popular, which I think will turn into, right, if I'm making the opto team here, it's Josh Allen and Jamar Chase, so which makes Burrow nice play. And then, as you said, I don't need to do anything with CMC. It's definitely a question here. Quasi says, how much is Mitchell going to cut into his workload? So I've heard a lot of people we had lots of spirited debate in the Discord over this, and my take, if in a month I'm wrong, I will absolutely eat my L, but you don't trade. This is the best team that Kyle Shanahan, even better than the team that he took to the Super Bowl and should have won. This is the best team that Kyle Shanahan has ever had. CMC was the piece that was going to take them over the top. You do not trade for Christian McCaffrey, and in the playoffs, in crunch situations, big games, put him on the bench for Eli Mitchell. You just don't do it. Is McCaffrey going to play every single snap like he did for Carolina? Probably not. No, but I am not personally worried at all about Christian McCaffrey because of Eli Mitchell. I would be worried that you get unlucky and Debo and Kittle and those guys score the touchdowns. So I do like them in this format, but I think we're going to get leverage elsewhere, and I'm just eating CMC, and I'm not worried about Mitchell.
Well, let's look at it from this respect too. Like, we have to take a minimum of 2 running backs. I have a feeling we're going to take more than 2 on this team, but just look at the field. Who are the like workhorse running backs in this tournament right now? It would probably be Eckler with the Chargers, that you would say is a workhorse, and Saquon with the Giants, right?
Who we have both losing in the first round. Right.
And
so if you like them, I have zero issue with Eckler and Saquon, but we're building for this particular bracket that we've put together here, and we have them both losing, so they can't compete with CMC.
Right. So, like, I mean, I just think that, like, worrying about workload doesn't matter, because it's never going to be like CMC's only going to take 30% of the snaps for the 49ers. It's not going to happen, unless there's an injury. So I just think that, like, it doesn't matter, like, in terms of like worrying about the workload with him. He's going to get more work than the majority of running backs in this entire tournament, and for longer.
Couple of really quick things that both Paul and Johnny said, that Allen was in the winning team last year, and I will say, like, we're not trying to say that you have to have. I tried to specifically say that I do not believe that you have to have the quarterback that's in the Super Bowl, but because of the bracket that we put together, I think, and the ownership that goes to Josh Allen, I think that Joe Burrow makes the most sense. But I think if you want to build, right, if you want to use, I don't know, we could have used Hurts, right? Just say, we're just going to take Hurts, not worry about those wide receivers, and go Chase. I think that that's totally fine. If you want to go Mahomes or something, I think that other quarterbacks are absolutely in play, even if you think the Bengals are going to make the Super Bowl. But I just think for the team that we're specifically building, that I like Burrow the most.
And what I would say is, there was a lot of Allen teams last year, and I'd be interested to know what Burrow's ownership was in this specific tournament last year, because no one thought the Bengals were going to make the Super Bowl. Everybody thought it was a 2-team race. So I guarantee if there was enough Burrow teams built, then he probably would have been in the winning lineup, is my guess. But there was also that crazy Chiefs Bills game that Burrow, tough to replicate.
I didn't go back and run the optimal from last year, but it's hard for me to imagine it wasn't Gabe and Burrow over Allen and Chase or whatever.
Yeah, most likely. All right, so we've locked in Burrow, we've locked in CMC. Do we have any other players that you want to go to off of this list that you think we have to have from, like, a first round matchup, whether they're going to advance or not going to advance?
Let's talk about the Vikings really quick, I think. I think Dalvin is in play. The Giants run deep, as a pivot off of Jefferson. I definitely think that that's viable, and I think Hawkinson is in play. I think we want a Viking for sure, so that's why I wanted to go there. What do we jam the Jefferson chalk as well? And then we have Burrow leverage. We can find some more leverage elsewhere, or do you like leveraging off of Justin Jefferson? What are your thoughts on him?
I think there's 3 places to go on them, and Jefferson is clearly the best play, right? We think he's going to get through. The guy can go nuclear with only the likes of, like, Jamar Chase as the only other guy in the tournament. Not the only other guy, but you know what I mean? Like, the 2 guys that you easily can go nuclear whenever.
Yes.
So you get him against the Giants, you get him against the 49ers, you get 2 shots at it of him just putting up like a 30 to 40 pointer, potentially both weeks. He could do it both weeks if he really wanted to. But he's going to be owned. Like, of the Vikings, like, the ownership on Jefferson is going to be through the roof. Dalvin Cook is the one way I'd be looking, and the other way would be Hawkinson. Like, 2 games out of Hawkinson is not terrible. He does get a decent amount of targets. We know that he's good. We've talked about this tight end position. It is tight end premium. I don't completely hate going Hawkinson, but everything tells me just to take the Jefferson chalk on the Vikings on this one and get weird. The, like, dark horse on this, I would say, is they get the Giants in week 1. They are going to play the 49ers most likely week 2 of this. Would you have any interest? They're terrible, but would you have any interest in the Vikings defense here, or do you just think there's other places to go there?
I think probably other places. I was also going to mention as a deep, their kicker.
Okay.
Along the same, but it's kind of the exact same thing as the defense is like. There's no rule that says, Justin Jefferson is amazing, but there's no rule that says Justin Jefferson has to go nuclear.
Nope.
There's no rule that, right? This could just be a bunch of 16-point games for everybody. And maybe they settle for a bunch of field goals. They're more than willing to to kick field goals. The Vikings are. So I think that's in play.
It feels
really
it's coming though, doesn't it? It feels like because it just feels he's going to go. I think he's going to go nuclear this weekend. Personally, like I think he's going to be the highest scoring player across the entire slate, and that's why I'm real nervous of passing on Jefferson. But again, leverage is you can leverage huge against Jefferson because 75% I would say are going to take Jefferson in their lineups, if not more.
The big thing for me that leans to Jefferson is, again, we're playing to this specific scenario. Now, if you had them losing, I guess you probably still, I don't know if you want Jefferson. You might want kicker or something like that if they lose. But anyway, because we have them winning, and then because we have them playing the 49ers, which is literally TD Vulture said what I was going to say. I'm not trying to, again, get hand in the dirt that much, but Dalvin ain't going nowhere on the Niners on the ground. I'm sorry to tell you. And Hawkinson, he could be okay against the Niners, but I don't think you're going to see the huge score that you need from Hawkinson. If anybody's going to do it in the second round, which you do need another good game, right, from Justin Jefferson, especially as chalk, it's probably him. So I think we can eat it. I think he's probably the most pivotal decision point, though, for your teams. What you do with the Vikings is the most pivotal thing, because he's definitely going to be chalk for good reason. But there are pivots, right? There are very strong pivots off of him. So I'm cool eating him. But then obviously moving forward, we have to be a little more cognizant kind of our product ownership.
But I think that when we go Burrow and we're not doing the Chase Jefferson wide receiver spot, that helps allow us to continue to take a chalky player like Justin Jefferson in CMC, because I still think that we're already vastly different than the way a lot of teams are going to start, because I think it's going to go some variation of Allen, Hurts, and then Mahomes for the top 3 quarterbacks. So we're still different. I don't think Burrow's going to be 0% owned or anything like that. I'm not saying that, but just going Burrow off of Chase really, I think, allows us to keep Jefferson in our player pool.
So let's do the Bills, because we have them losing in the second round. We obviously are not going to play Josh Allen. I don't believe that their running backs are in play. Dawson Knox is only barely in play at tight end, which then leads you to Stephon Diggs, or I guess Gabe. I also think that their defense is in play, and I'll say that because the Bengals matchup is not really very good for them, but they do get Skylar Thompson in the first round. I believe Teron Armstead, their all-world left tackle, is also out for the Dolphins. I could foresee the Bills defense putting up a lot of points, and that's double leverage, right, off of Dick. All we need is Diggs and Allen. Burrow needs to be more optimal than Allen, and 3 other wide receivers or whatever, 4 or 5 other wide receivers need to score more points than Diggs does in 2 games. That's an even trickier part for me. But if they lose to the Bengals, there's nothing that says Diggs has to, be the highest scorer out here. We have an Eagles guy still to use, right? We have Jaguars that we have playing 2 games. We have Bucks that we have playing 2 games. So it's Diggs probably here, and I think that that's okay. But also the Burrow teams are all going to use Diggs. They're all going to use Diggs.
Yes, that was going to be my point. Every Burrow team was going to have Diggs, even though Allen's probably going to be the most owned Bill. If you have Burrow, you're going Diggs most likely. Yeah. So I think it's still, I still think it's probably Diggs.
Yeah.
But I think I I really like the call of the Bills defense, and I think we keep that in our back pocket
Yep.
if we think that we're getting too chalky, and we can pivot that particular spot is the way I would say. But I'm totally down to do this however you want to do it.
Yeah, and Terrence is not wanting us to give away all the goods, so we can do that. We can get to the end, and maybe this won't technically be our finalized lineup, but we can kind of see what those last couple of decision points are. Let's do Bucks/Cowboys, because I think it's a game we probably want even a Cowboy, even though that they're and this was the guy I wanted to bring up, that like, well, both of these teams, in terms of guys that you can play over Diggs. I think CD is clearly the strongest Cowboys player. So I feel pretty strongly about him, even in a loss, particularly maybe in a loss if they're going to be, having to throw a lot more. And then I don't really have much of a take on any other Cowboys. I'm open to, whatever we think about kickers, defenses, etc. for them, but I don't really want to do Pollard or Zeke. Definitely, obviously not Dak. On the Bucs side, it's three guys: Evans, Godwin, and Lenny. And maybe I'm being an idiot with the narrative street, but I kind of really like Lenny, especially if they're going to play 2 games, not because they're going to be able to run the ball, but probably the opposite. I really like Rashad White, but I don't. I think it's just Brady's going to want Lenny out there the whole time. So I definitely am open to both wide receivers. They both look really good to me, but I kind of like Fournette.
What are your thoughts? I like CD, just on the Cowboys real quick. I like CD as well. Pollard, I would fight back a little bit more, but there's a lot of rumors on the injury front with him.
Right.
So that kind of worries me a little bit going into this game. Not a ton, but a little bit. But I've already said that I think that this is going to be kind of a dogfight in a sense. What are your thoughts on, we have the Bucs winning. What are your thoughts on Bucs defense here instead? Because I think they might get overlooked a bit. And we've already talked about Dak likes to turn the football over once or twice a game generally. And if they can house one, I mean, that's all we need for the tournament is one defensive touchdown, essentially, right? Like,
yep.
And we feel good. I like Fournette. I guess, if I'm forced to pick, I like Evans a little over Godwin just for explosion outputs. But I kind of like Bucs defense right now. Like just the way just thinking about it. Personally, that's the way I would lean. So I think CD for sure.
Yeah, let's put CD in, because I don't think we have any debate there, and he's going to be popular too. But I think that's okay. I think. What do you think the ownership is going to look like between, excluding the Bucs defense, but their big three, Godwin, Evans, and would you Godwin, Evans, Lenny in that order?
Ownership. I think Evans and Godwin are going to be real close, because I think everybody collectively likes Godwin better. But when you're thinking about the contest, it's like I like Godwin for like a season-long thing way over Evans. But if you're ever telling me I have to pick something for 1 or 2 weeks, it's Evans, right? Because of what he's capable of putting up. So I think they're going to be close with Lenny a little bit. I think you're going to be a little surprised on Dallas. I think their defense is going to get picked a decent amount.
Yeah.
More so than you would think.
Yeah.
So I think that CD is going to be the most popular of the Cowboys, but I don't think he's going to be like 80%
Justin Jefferson level,
or
CMC level, yeah.
Right. So I think like CD's fine. Yeah, I think if we're not going defense, I kind of like the Fournette call, especially if we got him going 2 games.
Yeah, and the other thing, again, getting our hand in the dirt, kind of like we did with Jefferson. If I'm projecting them to win a game, which again, I just want to keep making that clear that this is not necessarily like the absolute, this is how we're building our optimal team or whatever. We built a bracket and we're building the team based on that bracket. And if they're going to play 2 games and play, you talked about how good the Eagles defense is in the next round. I don't know how much I love Mike Evans, against the Eagles secondary. It's not even a great matchup against the Cowboys for him. And then it's a really bad matchup against the Eagles. Godwin, I think, can be okay, but it's not a very good matchup for him. It's not a great matchup for Lenny either, but I think that the Eagles game, right? He can definitely have success against the Cowboys, and then the Eagles game would set him up for, one of those bullshit 9 catches for 65 yards type game from Lenny in the second round. So that's kind of why I like him, and I don't think he's going to be crazy popular.
So Johnny brought up Pat's ownership numbers in the chat. He has Godwin projected first, Evans second, Suckup third, which is, another interesting take there. Lenny fourth, and defense fifth. So it sounds right, for the most part.
Well, I will say I love Chris Godwin, but I wouldn't play him as the highest owned buck. I would go to the defense, like you said first. I would play Suckup over him. They're definitely they're willing to kick field goals. Maybe Brady will overtake Leftwich on that in the his final run here with the Bucks probably. But they've kicked a lot of 4th and 1 from the 4. They kick field goals. So and they are really bad in the red zone. So I think Suckup's definitely in play. But let's do Lenny and move on here. What about Jags?
Yeah, this is exactly where I wanted to go. I wanted to go to the Jags Chargers game because I think personally, I just think the easiest pick in this game is ETN.
100%.
Famously not a big ETN guy,
famously. It's almost like you wrote a song about it.
Almost like I put him in a song. However, if we're getting him against the Lightning, as someone I know calls them, or if we're getting them against the Chiefs, if they get through, both of those teams are not great against the run. Right? Mm-mm. Chargers can't stop the run. The Chiefs can't stop the run. So they might have to abandon it at some point, especially against the Chiefs. But I think ETN, I love Christian Kirk, and I want to play the Jags passing game. Trust me, I want to play the Jags passing game very, very much. But God, I think it's ETN, and I don't think it's particularly close against anyone else, just based on the way their bracket's going to break.
Yep. Love ETN. The comments from the chat are very I have no issues with either of these comments in particular. Johnny bringing up, I agree with you that I like their wide receivers. It would be ETN and Ingram for me for sure. Maybe kicker being kind of in that top 3 on the Jag side. But if we're projecting them to win, I really want ETN or Ingram. I think Ingram, as Johnny brings up, is a really fascinating kind of tight end leverage play because we do have the Chiefs losing, and so playing 2 games and losing, and so Ingram's going to play 2 games in our version of these playoffs. If he beats Travis Kelce, which he can beat Travis Kelce, that is pretty amazing leverage, and you can get one of the Chiefs skill guys. You could play McKinnon, I think, as a pretty strong play as a pivot off of Kelce, or you can go to kicker as well for the Chiefs. I think it's so much hand in the dirt on this episode that it's making me sick to my stomach. But I agree with you. This is ETN time for me for the Jags. So I love Ingram too. I think Johnny brings up good points with tight end premium, but ETN's my guy. I just think he's going to smash.
What I would say is I want a Jags skill position player.
Yes.
So I want ETN. I want Ingram. I want Christian Kirk. Hell, maybe I even want Zay Jones. Just because I think that this first game's going to shoot out. Real quick, did we decide to take Diggs?
Oh, we haven't.
Were we circling back to that?
We're circling back to Diggs. I think we narrowed it to Diggs and defense.
Okay.
There, and then there was another thing I thought we talked about circling back to, but definitely that one. We still have in our back pocket, and we only have 3 flex spots left, so we'll start to get down here and keep Diggs / Bills defense in our heads. Just to wrap the Jags, they're another really good one. We like ETN the most, but yeah, if you wanted to say this is a smash spot for Christian Kirk, I'm going to play him at low ownership, by all means. Ingram is my number 2, but I obviously love him, but again, like if you're playing a bunch of teams, you want to sprinkle some Zay in. You want to sprinkle. Here's a really off the wall take. If you, I don't believe that this is the easiest path to winning, but you want to say, none of the quarterbacks go totally nuts. Lawrence gets the Chargers and the Chiefs in games where he's going to have to put up a bunch of points. If he drops, say, 60, 65 in these total points in these two games, and then you get right. I mean, how many Lawrence teams are there going to be?
Very
10 in the whole tournament. Now you got, doesn't really matter what you do elsewhere, right? Play Kelsey, play CMC, play Jefferson, play CD, play Diggs, you play all the best guys and Trevor Lawrence, and just say he's going to do enough in two games that I can just get all the superstars that are going to score the most. Right, I get AJ Brown, I get everybody that's going to score the most points, and I don't really have to worry much about leverage. Maybe you do something fun at kicker or defense. So I just think the Jags are like the linchpin to this whole tournament.
Yeah, and I just really like the Jags. I like this game to shoot out. I like it as a whole, to be honest with you.
So what about the Chargers? If we're Mike Williams is still not at practice, I'm going under the assumption he's not going to play.
Right.
So if we assume, because it's a Saturday game, if we assume Mike Williams doesn't play and we assume the Chargers lose, does that mean Eckler? Does that mean Keenan? Or does that mean, kicker? Or nobody? I don't think it's nobody, but
no, I think you have to play a Charger. I think the kicker is definitely a viable option for the Chargers here. Eckler is the no-brainer in the sense that, like, he is the best play on the Chargers by far, and I don't think it's close. Although it is full point PPR, Keenan Allen isn't the worst play ever either. Not a guy I like to play a lot of the time, but Eckler's ownership, I just think, is going to be through the roof.
That's why I like Keenan.
Right. And I think because, like we said, this is like a coin toss game. People are going to be looking at getting 2 games out of Eckler, right? But if we're wrong about the Jags, but we get 2 games out of Keenan Allen, who cares? Because he's playing, again, the run out is still the Chiefs. So we still think that this first game is going to, pop off a bit. Second game should pop off a bit, theoretically.
Right.
But I'm not opposed to the kicker either, based on the fact that we think they're going to lose the first round.
Yeah, it would have to. We could technically keep this one in our back pocket because we would have to then compare one game of Eckler and Keenan versus one game of, we already have one game of CD in here. So one game of CD versus those guys, and then one game of the other teams that we're going to get to fill out our roster. I did just want to say, like, I know Keenan Allen doesn't seem like a very sexy play, but if Mike Williams is out, like, Eckler is definitely going to do his thing. No questions asked. But, like, Keenan might get 20 targets if the game shoots out. Like, they don't have anybody else that can get open. And Gerald Everett might get open occasionally and drop the ball. And so it's him and Eckler. And so it's just kind of an ownership thing. I think if you got down to this point and you're like us, like I'm sort of teetering on the fence about how much leverage we need left. But if I felt we needed leverage, I would definitely go Keenan. I think we can plug Eckler for right now because I do agree that he's the better play, but like,
I would rather plug Keenan. Like, honestly,
okay, let's do it.
I think Eckler's better. I think he's theoretically the better, like, overall better play, but I think Keenan's the better, like, play for this tournament.
I think if we're talking like under-owned and over-owned, Eckler, it projects the best, has by far the best chance to be optimal, but he's being treated as though he's a lock, I think.
That's what I would say too.
And especially in this scenario where we're playing for a one Chargers game. Mm-hmm. If Eckler could score 28 points and Keenan beats him, like, I'm not projecting Keenan Allen for 30, but if he gets, if they lose and they throw 55 times, Eckler could have an awesome game and Keenan beats him. Mm-hmm. So in a 1-game sample, which is what we're playing for, I like Keenan.
All right, so we have 2 flexes left, a tight end, a kicker, and a defense. We still have not taken a Chief,
Right.
an Eagle, or a Bill.
Bill.
So let's talk about defense real quick.
Okay.
Because I think the Bills are like one of our shortlist defenses.
Correct.
I'm going to throw this out there. It's going to sound a little gross. What are your thoughts on the Ravens defense? And do you think they're going to be too owned for that team? Because if you're taking the Ravens, who are you taking? You're either taking Andrews, Dobbins, or probably actually Justin Tucker might get taken a lot based on name value, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. And people are like, well, they're not, I don't want to take any of their other guys. So he's the best kicker in the NFL. I'll take him.
And I think the Bengals might scare people about their defense, but Bengals take a lot of sacks. And I'm not opposed to taking the Baltimore defense. I mean, we look around at what we have left. Do we want to leverage the Eagles defense ever? Is that something you would be thinking about?
It's in play.
Because they would get
Bucks.
I mean, even if they get
have them.
Yeah.
Bucks, Niners, Bengals are their matchups. Obviously not amazing, but I mean Bucks is a pretty good matchup. Niners is not amazing, but it's a rookie quarterback against a really good defense. And then as you said, not that Burrow is not going to have success against them if they do play, but the Eagles are going to score some points. And like as long as AJB, Devonta or Goddard don't totally pop off, so it's not that I don't like the Ravens. I think the leverage of one of the defenses of those three good teams really sticks out to me. Here we have the outs with the Chiefs. If we use the Chiefs, we have them playing 2 games, one of which is against the Jags, which is like not an awesome matchup, but it's fine. And then they would play those Bengals like you talked about. So I think that they're reasonable. The Bills, I think, are the best play. But the Chiefs and the Bills I like a lot because Allen is going to be super chalky and we have leveraged him. We can take this leverage like to the max with the Bills because any non-Josh Allen team is going to have Diggs. So we just take it one step further, right? We play Keenan over Eckler. We play Bills over Allen and Diggs. And it's like, dude, nothing else matters. Like literally nothing else matters.
I think that allows us to take Kelsey. Like if we take Bills D, we lock in Kelsey easily.
Yep. And because the other thing you could do is you could play Goddard, right? You could play like Chiefs defense with Goddard or like McKinnon with Goddard would be something that I think you could do. Or kicker. Technically, I don't really want to do that, but you could do Chiefs kicker with Goddard. So I'm open to really either of those things. I do think Goddard's pretty interesting, but I feel like the Bills is like, I always talk about this like in DFS or in best ball, whatever, like the cleanest path to first place, right? Like how many things do I need to break my way and what's the most direct leverage? I mean, the Bills defense has just been screaming at me as that thing. It's like, you only got to fade a kind of struggling Josh Allen and you just need Diggs to lose to a bunch of other wide receivers. And the Bills have an awesome defense. They could play. I mean, they play fucking Skylar Thompson in the first round. They could be
back too.
Yeah, Micah Hyde's coming back there. I just think it's Bills. I think it's Bills to me.
Well, what I really like, not only does it let us take Kelsey, I think if we do Bills defense, it allows us to grab AJ Brown too.
Yep.
So I think that's the huge leverage point where it's like we get to take those guys and our team's still very, very unique in the sense that we can go Kelsey, we can go AJ Brown, but we are still so different because of Fournette, because of, I think, ETN, because of Keenan Allen, but mostly because of this Burrow and Bills defense is going to be like, that's why I kind of like this. So that's what I'm down for. I like it. I like this play a lot.
Yep. So we don't need to fill out these to Terrence's point. I don't want to ruin the contest for you guys. I see a lot of the people in the chat are like, behind their keyboards nodding, like, people are like, love Keenan Allen, love this, love that, whatever. So I don't want to, have any of your teams getting duped. So we won't finish it out. But you can see here, I like to go to the defense spot to kind of see what teams we have left. As you see, we have 2 spots with these 4 teams left, and not a lot of fun. Not a lot of fun guys from these 2 teams. Obviously, one of them will be a kicker, but I think that you could, from here, this kind of team that we've built, you could flip a bunch of things around. If you want to get chalkier, you want to just go Eckler, right? Or you prefer Christian Kirk or something like that over each team. There's little pivots you can make off of this team that I think are more than fine. But this is kind of the core that I really, really like. Would there be anybody that like stuck out to you as a I don't really care about the kicker spot that much, but as like a flex that was just like would be more at the top of your list if we were going to round out this team?
I mean, you would pivot directly to either Tyreek or Saquon, right? Those are the 2 guys that you would think of for that flex spot. Kind of like DK Metcalf, though.
I was gonna say, I can't. It's funny because we keep bringing up all the. Johnny says this team is so with multiple O's low owned. It's not even funny. True GPP style. That's the only way in which my brain works. Is just I understand that sometimes, like some people might say, the more seasoned FFPC playoff challenge people might say, like, this is maybe a little bit too off the board, but I don't know, man. I'm not sure that as long as you're like, we didn't do anything stupid, right? We didn't play, like, I know we mentioned Zay Jones. Like, we didn't play Zay and like, MVS. We didn't do like stupid shit. These are like the best players on all of their teams. Like, this team still projects awesome. We just had a slightly different variation of how the playoffs play out. I think that that's what's fun about this whole format is who on this list is not a fantasy superstar. I guess Lenny maybe like but he has been. We played a bunch of freaking superstars, and people are saying this is like a crazy low owned team. Like that's I think that this is how you should build these teams. I know not everybody agrees, but like, dude, the dupes in this and the individual player ownership is just out of this world. So the leverage stuff is the most important thing. And I think that we chose the kind of the most fun leverage points.
And all the teams we have left are teams that we're projecting to lose in the first round. So when I say DK Metcalf, that means that he just has to outscore Tyreek Hill and Saquon Barkley in 1 week, right? Which I think is totally acceptable. I think we talked about what the quote unquote possible weakness of the 49ers defense is earlier, and that's what DK Metcalf can exploit. So I kind of like DK Metcalf, and then I know, like, when I look at the list, Baltimore is one of the teams we have left. I think Justin Tucker is going to be a chalky kicker. I'm going Giants kicker. They're playing in a dome. Just give me the 1 week of them playing in the dome. I'll take the Giants kicker there. They should move the ball at least a little bit, maybe 2 field goals, 3, whatever. I don't care. Like, whatevs. So I think for me personally, I'm not saying this is what we have to do, but I'd be looking at like DK and Giants kicker.
Yep. I also think Giants kicker makes a ton of sense in that Justin Jefferson's probably still optimal even. And so what I mean is the Vikings could lose and you get the Giants kicker. So it's this perfect combination of Justin Jefferson can go nuts regardless and he, even people that fade him, if they lose, you didn't really gain anything. If they like the way that you gain on fading Justin Jefferson when he's 95% owned or whatever is them winning a couple games and like Hawkinson, puts up that 40 point, tight end premium score or whatever, right? Dalvin runs for 203. That's how you beat Justin Jefferson. But if they lose, you probably didn't gain anything fading him. Not too much. Like, you're still alive. If you play to chalk Justin Jefferson and they lose. And then on the Giants side, playing the kicker, like, no, you don't have to worry about Daniel Jones. You don't have to worry about the wide receivers, really. I mean, are Richie James and Isaiah Hodgins going to be optimal in this? I guess maybe in 2 games, Richie James could score 40 points, but like, that's pretty crazy. But like the Giants kicker could, if they win, could just easily be optimal. It of course could be Saquon too. But even if they win, I think the Giants kicker could be optimal, and definitely if they lose, right, that he scores 12 or 15 points or something like that in a loss. I just think that it makes way too much sense. And then, like you said, you can get DK Metcalf. You could go Mark Andrews, tight end premium in that flex spot. You mentioned Dobbins earlier. Don't totally love him with Anthony Brown in that matchup. And then you could also go with one of the Dolphins guys. I think that there's three. The Pound was asking about like Isaiah Hodgins and Dobbins and some of these sleeper type guys. Jeff Wilson, who it looks like, I think it was Johnny that said Mostert's going to play with a cast on his hand, but I think Jeff Wilson would be in play here. If you're playing Bills defense, I think it would probably be Tyreek or Waddle. But thought being with the Dolphins is Bills like get a couple pick sixes or something like that, right? Bills defense becomes optimal by 2 first half defensive touchdowns, which kills Allen, which kills Diggs, and then Skyler's going to suck, but he's going to have to throw 50 times because they're going to be down by 20 or whatever, which is very good for Tyreek and Waddle. So pretty short list of those flex plays, but I think there's a lot you can do.
I think this Bills defense call of yours is the best leverage point of the entire tournament.
I think we have a little extra leverage with like Keenan and stuff like that, but I think literally if you just play Bills defense, you can do just about anything else that you want. I think that's why I like him.
It makes me want to like go and build my own team tomorrow, which I might do, where I just stick the Bills defense in again and just play either a Hurts or Mahomes team or something and see what I build through that. But I think that the more we think about this, Allen and Diggs are obviously great plays, but this Bills defensive pivot, I like it a lot. Love the Bills defense.
Yep. And here's some analysis from somebody who, again, knows the ownership and such a little bit better with us. Johnny says, you cut the field in half at your Burrow pick, then cut it by 75 with the Lenny pick, then cut it by 75 with Keenan pick. But again, we did 3 things out of a huge roster. Like we didn't like there's CMC's on here, Justin Jefferson's on here, CD's on here, right? AJ Brown's on here. All the chalk is on here. It's just we like 2 pivots. It was like no Eckler, no Josh Allen, but Travis Kelce's on here. We didn't do anything that crazy. It's just little minor pivots, but thoughtful pivots, right? It wasn't like that's what I think people screw up is they're like, oh, when I pivot, I'm going to get huge leverage, right? I'm going to play Joe Mixon. And it's like, I mean, yes, technically Joe Mixon could be okay, but like, you don't got to go that deep. You know what I mean? You don't have to do that. I'm going to play, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a crazy off the board guy, Mike Gesicki, right? I'm gonna do something really stupid with my one last. But it's like you don't have to do that. Just like be intentional and thoughtful about those couple of direct leverage points. Like literally, we might win this whole tournament if 3 things happen: the Bengals go to the Super Bowl, Keenan Allen. No, the Bengals go to the Super Bowl. Keenan Allen outscores Austin Eckler and Bills defense.
Yeah, that's it. Bills get knocked out second round.
Yep.
Have 2 relatively low scoring games. Yeah. I love it. I actually love this team that we built.
Me too. I can't wait for it for the Bengals to like somehow lose to the Ravens or whatever,
I'm not watching football the rest of the offseason if that happens.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, this went on probably a little longer than we expected, but it was a lot of fun. Like that was a lot of fun, and I also feel a lot more feel a lot more purposeful about my playoff takes now that we got to talk it through. Hopefully this helped everybody else kind of think through some of the things. Obviously you do not need to agree with our takes, but hopefully the way we kind of processed our pivots and how we're thinking about the playoff matchups and all that kind of stuff, hopefully that helped. We will be back tomorrow. I don't know if Rob will be back if he's on vacation. He might be taking a day. Yeah, exactly. Be back tomorrow. We are going to do 1 hour of just drafting playoff best ball teams. Going to go live, whatever tickles your fancy. If you guys want to talk more FFPC Playoff Challenge, we of course can. If you just want to draft in, the gauntlet, of course. If you want to draft on drafters, whatever you guys want to do, we'll fire up some drafts and shoot the shit about the playoffs and playoff best ball for an hour tomorrow, since it kicks off on Saturday. If you are not in the Spike Week Discord, there is even more conversation around all of these subjects than Rob and I could cover in this 2-hour show going around the clock in there. There's a link. It's 100% free in the description. Highly, highly, highly recommend that. And as soon as the playoffs are over, once the playoffs are going and there's no more playoff best ball contests, we are going to be diving already in to 2023. Early drafts and early player takes and all of that. So be on the lookout for some of that analysis, and make sure you are in the Discord. Anything that you got before we get out of here, Rob?
I kind of like that we had a backup plan in case we were done with the show in 45 minutes on what to fill out the rest of the show with. So glad we had that in place.
Yeah, just in case, it's a pretty simple format. We'll probably have it done. Pretty quick. Longest show we've had in 4 months.
Yep. So that's all for me. But yeah, I think I'll probably join you tomorrow and do some drafts.
Perfect. So be on the lookout for that. Enjoy your evening, guys. And we will talk to you tomorrow.